Happy Christmas Eve, everybody. Merry Christmas. This is the complete guide to your fantasy football championships, NFL Fantasy Football Week 17. I'm going to lay out all the optimal starts and the guys that have rougher matchups at each position, talk a little bit about latest news, and get you guys absolutely fully prepared for fantasy football. Can you believe it? Week 17. I got some important announcements before we begin. First and foremost, make sure you guys do hit the thumbs up, turn on the bell. We are going year round. So this is not just fantasy football. We talk about trending news, latest news and notes, everything sports. So I'm going to be covering all of the hot trending topics and everything you guys need to be up to date on the news. So make sure you guys turn on the bell, and we go year round for fantasy. So I'm going to start rolling out the 2025 content, early rankings, early sleepers, everything. Also going to be covering some of the busts for this year. So everything's going to be here on this channel. So turn on the bell and drop a comment below. Tell me that you're here. Lion mentality. We go year round. This is very, very important. Important announcement, okay? Secondly, this is very important as well. I know a lot of people are out of fantasy football. This is the championships, right? After this is done, if you guys want to get my sports picks, they've been doing really, really well. If you guys want to win in bets, right here, the Counselor's Edge, I've linked it below right here, right now. Get it below. You're going to get access to all of my picks all the way up until the Super Bowl. And then we're going to continue on with this, the Counselor's Edge, until next year. So make sure you guys join the Edge below, okay? You're going to get a major edge on the picks, all right? So I didn't do a Studs and Sucks. I've just been busy with family. I've kind of been winding down here because, you know, it's been a long year. We grind all year long. I didn't even want to waste my time with the Studs and Sucks, but a couple of things I want to talk about in regards to the news here from last week. This concussion stuff. Now, I'm all about preservation of, you know, a person's brain, obviously, but I believe the fix was in 100% because Jalen Hurts was pulled out, okay, of that game. I know he was a little bit dazed when he got up, but he was on the sideline. He was fine. He wanted to get back into the game, but they pulled him, and they were going to win that game. And then Washington came back and won, and it screwed a lot of fantasy football teams. That's something that really upsets me, is that these guys really mess up your team, right? And the coaches and the NFL, it's like they want you to lose in your props bets, in your fantasy, and even in the bets. So that's why I created the Counselor's Edge, because I'm thinking outside the box, you know, figuring out what these guys are up to, because I believe there is an element there, you know, and they are legally allowed to fix these. They're an entertainment company, so they can mess with these games a bit. So anyway, I think Jalen Hurts should have stayed in that game for fantasy and reality. He apparently he wanted to get back in. It just sucks that he screwed so many fantasy teams not playing. That's number one. I want to talk about that. Number two, the Tank Dell injury. Like, I'm all about, like, you know, being, you know, empathetic and sympathetic, whatever it is, when someone gets hurt. We don't want anybody to get hurt. Now, he tore his knee and everybody starts crying. But I want to talk about CJ Stroud here because he started crying on the sideline. Some people are like, it's okay, it's his teammate. Dude, you're at war here. You're on the gridiron. Like, this is time to go and start winning. You don't need to be crying like his mother on the sideline. Okay, I understand it's a knee, but God forbid, it's nothing like, you know, it's not going to be paralyzed. It's not going to be like brain trauma. It's a broken bone. It sucks, right? His career could be impacted, which could suck as well. Dislocated knee, torn ACL, Tank Dell. But to sit there and cry, like, I don't know, man. I'm one of the tough guys here. I was born into a tough era. Man up and get back on the field. You got to win a game, right? And you're leading this team, right? To sit there bawling your eyes out like a 7-year-old girl is just ludicrous. So that's my thoughts on that. You guys can say whatever you want to say. Oh, Joe, you're such a mean guy. I don't care. Get back on the field, Stroud. It's not a time to cry. I talked to my best friend the other day, and I'm just like, dude, I'm like, if you broke your leg on the field, I'd be like, dude, I'm sorry this happened, man. I hope you feel okay. Oh, man. Oh, I want to sit there and cry and get me a tissue, bawl my eyes out in an emotional, dramatic scene. I just wouldn't do that. So that's my thoughts on it. Everybody's got their opinion. That's mine. Let me know what you guys think. Should CJ Stroud have just gone back, you know, hey, man, I hope you're doing well. Get back on the field nice and strong. Lead his energy, or should he have been crying like a 7-year-old girl at the sideline, okay? It was just crazy. Those are my thoughts on that, okay? Other things in the news here that really isn't much. Deontay Johnson got acquired, claimed off waiver wires by the Texans on Monday. Okay, yeah, I mean, they need some help there for sure with these injuries. Tank Dell obviously on IR. Justice Hill had a concussion. That was very sad. That's really concerning. If you saw the hit on Justice Hill, that is something to be really concerned about when it involves the head and all that stuff. It's crazy. Other things, there's nothing really crazy. Jordan Love did really well. That was kind of obvious that they'd win that game. Christian Watson has a knee issue. He should be okay as well. I don't know what's going on here. Knee just a little banged up. Again, nothing really crazy in the news here, but again, I want to make sure you guys get the optimal starts for this week. So let's just dive right into that. That's the main focus here, is making sure you guys win your championships, okay? And when you are looking at your last starts and sits here, you got to make sure literally that you got to start you guys that are consistent. Now, Josh Allen didn't have a good week last week as well as he could have. And some guys fall off particular weeks. They don't have as good of a week, but you got to just go with the guys that have been consistent all year round. There is a chance that they could bust the last week, but you just can't roll the dice on somebody who hasn't been as consistent, okay? So let's just dive right into who the optimal starts are at each position. I do want to start off here. Let's just filter here by the 2 games that are on Christmas Day. I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, first of all, before I get into this. I hope you guys unwind, recharge your battery, spend time with family. That's very important. But we do have 2 Christmas games here. We got the Chiefs versus Steelers. We got the Ravens versus the Texans here. And just a real quick snippet on who's got optimal matchup at each position. Let's take a quick look here. CJ Stroud, great matchup versus Baltimore. Lamar, mid-range. If it's yellow, it's a mid-range matchup, everybody, okay? If it's red, it's a tougher matchup. But if you got Pat Mahomes, he's coming off a 24-point week, you got to start him. I know Pittsburgh's a tougher defense, but you got to start him if that's the guy you came with. But this is if it's going to help you if you have 2 quarterbacks, or if you got a quarterback on the bench, you're torn on 2 quarterbacks. Who do I start? This is going to give you some insight, okay? And again, if you want my NFL picks, who's going to win these matchups? Counselor's Edge. I've linked it below, okay? But this is based on matchup difficulty, all right? Obviously, you're going to start Lamar. Obviously, you're going to start CJ Stroud if you got him. You drafted him with high draft capital. You got to start him unless you have a better option, which we're going to get to in a second. But these are the quarterbacks. Now, let's take a look at the running backs, okay? Based on these 2 games, who's got the great matchups? They all got tough matchups. Now, 11 is kind of a mid-range matchup, but Pacheco, mid-range matchup. As you can see, all these guys that are playing on the Christmas games have tougher matchups. Joe Mixon, I mean, if you got him, you got to start him. Derrick Henry, you're not going to sit him, but 4th hardest matchup versus position, as you can see here. All red here for the running backs, all tougher matchups. Najee Harris, tougher matchup. Derrick Henry, tougher matchup. Joe Mixon, you could see the running backs have it in tough that day. When you're looking at the further looking at the Christmas games, we look at wide receiver. Nico Collins, obviously a must start now with Dell being gone, and he's got a great matchup versus Baltimore. Again, we're talking Christmas games here, and you can see here who else has got, Zay Flowers, good matchup here. Who else has got a good matchup? I mean, Pickens, mid-range matchup, a little banged up. Be careful there. Calvin Austin could be a good start. Only 11 points last time. You're out. And Xavier Worthy, mid-range matchup, as you can see here, okay? So, again, the easiest matchup versus position when it looks at wide receiver is Nico Collins. Looking at the tight end, you got to start your consistent tight ends. Pat Freiermuth is a good start based on matchup here. As you can see, very easy matchup in the green, coming off a 5-point game. Not the greatest last time. Travis Kelce, a must start, only 7 points, 8 points, and 6 points in the last 3 games. Not very good here, okay? And Mark Andrews, as you can see here at the bottom, just a mid-range matchup, as you can see, 11th hardest versus position, but those are your tight ends, okay? Now, defensively, again, very not the easiest matchups. These are not prime defenses you want to start. KC and Baltimore, mid-range matchups, and Steelers and the Texans, tough matchups versus position, particularly when on paper, Texans have the hardest matchup versus position versus Baltimore. Texans is not a good defense to start, coming off 1 point the last week here, as you can see. Now, that is, in a nutshell, the Christmas matchups. If you're looking at, pick any of those players. And again, if you guys want my picks, Counselor's Edge below. So now I'm going to filter for the rest of the matchups, the rest of the 14 games. Now, we do have actually, guys, two games on Wednesday, the Christmas. We got one on Thursday, the Boxing Day. We got 3 games on Saturday, and the rest of them are Sunday. So you guys, it's a split up here throughout the days off, so you guys can enjoy some games throughout the weekend. I understand that the Christmas games are going to be on Netflix, or check your local listings on where you're going to watch them, okay? So I'm going to filter here. So let's go through all of the games here, 14 games, all the optimal starts at each position, starting off with the quarterback position. So let's rip right through it. Again, smash it, tap it, slap it, drop your starts and six questions below. I'll try to get to as many as I possibly can. Let's rip right through this, okay? So when you look at quarterback, Mason Rudolph, great matchup. Bryce Young, coming off a 27-point game, great matchup. Baker Mayfield, great matchup. Jalen Hurts, great matchup here. Now, is he going to play? Should play. I think he should have played. Got back into that game, the other one. So it is what it is, man. He just screwed a lot of teams, man. Now, there's a lot of people that got 16 rounds. that may have gotten Hurts, but they still got through the championship. So everyone that sent their lineup to me with Jalen Hurts and still went through, amazing stuff, man. I give you guys props. He screwed a lot of teams, I tell you. Jaden Daniels, I would say, look at that. 36 points last week. Great matchup versus Atlanta. Must start. Bo Nix, Tua, all great matchups versus position. As you can see, Derek Carr banged up. I wouldn't touch him this week. Okay, Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, all great matchups. Now, Kyler Murray, they're out of the playoffs. I don't know if he's got anything to play for, but I'd be a little cautious starting Kyler Murray. He's probably out playing Call of Duty at this point. Guys that have it in tough, Sam Darnold. If I don't mention him here, guys, they've got a mid-range matchup. Sam Darnold, tough matchup versus position versus Green Bay. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, tough matchup. Geno Smith, tough matchup versus position versus Chicago. Jared Goff, you still got to start him. I mean, I don't care who he's playing. He's been red hot. He's been solid. 44 points and 28 points last week. Past 2 games, amazing stuff. Jordan Love, safe start, but again, tough matchup. If you got a better option, Jordan Love, do it. 6th hardest matchup versus position this week versus Minnesota. Be aware of that. Burrow's a must start, but he does have a tough matchup versus position versus Denver. Cooper Rush, 15 points last week. He did have an easy matchup last week, did Cooper Rush. Now he's got the 8th hardest matchup versus position. Aiden O'Connell, Aaron Rodgers, all tough matchups. Josh Allen, tough matchup versus position versus the Jets a little bit. Again, if you got Josh Allen, you got to start him. Only 12 points last week, coming off those monster weeks of 55 and 44 points, as you can see here. But Josh Allen, still, you got to start him here. And as you can see here, guys, visual display, some guys that have mid-range matchups like Drake May, Matt Stafford, and Justin Herbert, okay? So, again, Michael Penix, I'm going to ask about him. Didn't have a good week, only 7 fantasy points last week. I know a lot of people were excited to start him. He had a good matchup versus the Giants last week. He just didn't get it done. He's a rookie. He's getting started. He's going to have some jitters. You got to understand that with these guys. He was a major volatile risk. I know people took a chance, but he's a perfect example of you always got to start the quarterbacks that have been consistent throughout the year for you, especially when you're coming into fantasy football playoffs, okay? I'm going to get to running backs. We're going to get to wide receivers. We're going to get tight ends and defenses, making sure you guys are optimized. At the end, I'm going to give you guys some more tips. But before I do, head on over to mybookie.ag. This is the site I use for my sports bets. Mybookie.ag. Head on over there right now. Use code FFC. There's a 50% match deposit on your first deposit. Get in on the action. I know a lot of people are out of fantasy football, but this is the site you want to use right now. Mybookie.ag. The code you want to use is FFC. And it continues the excitement throughout the year. Fantasy football is over for you guys. It's going to be over for a lot of people. I love getting into the playoffs. I love getting into the matchups. I love diving into the bets and doing some parlays and having a really good time. Of course, do it responsibly, right? You don't want to go nuts in there, but you got to do it responsibly. Mybookie.ag, code you want to use is FFC. Go create an account, put down your deposit, 50% match deposit. All right, let's dive into, let's get right into the running backs here. So guys that have good matchups, we're going to rip through this. Again, if you have any questions, drop them below. I'm going to get to as many as I humanly possibly can. Bucky Irving, I'm just going to rip through this. Bucky Irving and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, great matchup versus Carolina. Okay, let's keep going here. Tony Pollard, good matchup versus position versus Jacksonville. Awesome matchup here. Walker and Charbonnet, be careful. Make sure you check your injury designation before they start. Both these guys have been banged up. Charbonnet just did nothing last week. 3 points, absolutely crazy. Breece Hall, 14 points last time out. Just not exciting, but he does have a good matchup. Other guys with great matchups, Travis Etienne, good matchup. We got Jonathan Taylor, finally bouncing back, and he redeemed himself after that drop near the goal line the week before. So good on Jonathan Taylor, making a case for a high draft capital pick next year. I'm still not drafting Jonathan Taylor this late in his career. Saquon Barkley, great matchup. He's not parking anything. He's on the field running, and he's running really well. 30 points last week. And you got to start him, man. Great matchup. Kyron Williams, great matchup. He's been good and consistent all year. Tyrone Tracy coming off a 17-point week. Good matchup versus position. And Jahmyr Gibbs, 28 points last week. And apparently there's talk about Montgomery coming back in the playoffs. Not in fantasy playoffs, but reality. But it doesn't mean Jahmyr Gibbs isn't going to have another amazing game without Montgomery there. And Bijan, a good matchup here. 12th easiest versus position, okay? Those are some guys that you must start. Guys that have it a little bit rough, Rico Dowdle. And I'd be cautious starting any Dallas team. They're out of the playoffs. A Dallas player, they just suck, right? Brian Robinson Jr., be careful there. Again, ice cold, 4 points last week, not good. Tough matchup. Isaac Grendo, I heard he was back to practice. Be careful there starting them. Patrick Taylor, only 4 points, just did nothing. I know a lot of people were excited to start him. These guys coming in, this late in the season, Miller, Kondre Miller, these guys, like you always got to be cautious, you know. These guys haven't played all year. I mean, there's some upside with some of these guys, but you always got to be risky. You always got to start consistent guys, especially in the fantasy football playoffs, guys that you kind of know, what to expect from. Stevenson, 13 points last week, 7th hardest matchup versus position. Achane, I mean, you got to start him, but tough matchup. As you can see, 9th hardest versus position. Chuba, coming off a big week. You got to start him based on volume. Versus Tampa Bay, though, 10th hardest versus position. James Cook coming off a big week, 12th hardest versus position. So if I don't mention them guys like Chase Brown, I think you should still start. James Conner was banged up. Take a look at that. Might be Trey Benson week this week. He was a little banged up too. If I don't mention them guys, mid-range matchup. But again, you want to go back, and I'll tell you some tips at the end on how you want to start your players. Okay, I'm going to save that to the end. All right, so that's the running back position. I'm going to pull up here. I'm going to filter by wide receiver. And wide receiver, again, start your starters, guys that have been consistent, okay? Romeo Doubs, again, bit of a wide receiver roulette, but Packers wide receivers, great matchup versus position. Tyreek Hill, great matchup versus position versus New England. Versus Cleveland. New England, Cleveland. Okay, let's keep going here. Other guys, again, take a look here. Calvin Ridley, you got the green. Good matchup. Take a look here, right? You could screen, freeze the screen. Take a look how they did the last 3 weeks. 17 points for Ridley last time out. And, green matchup. Good. So, again, this is going to help you with your decisions, right? Terry McLaurin, good matchup versus position here, right? Jacoby Myers, only 6 points. Should have been doing better, but good matchup versus position. A.J. Brown, hopefully his quarterback's hand. Good matchup versus position. Him and Smith, it's kind of wide receiver roulette on who's going to have a big week. As you can see, Smith had a good week 2 weeks ago, 31 points, only 11 the last week. A.J. Brown's been consistent. You might want to start him. Good matchup here versus Dallas. Awesome matchup. Marvin Harrison, only 8 points, 5 points, and 9 points the past 3 weeks. What a big time fantasy football bust. Second round pick has just not lived up to the hype. Very unfortunate, great talent, but again, it's Kyler Murray sucking. I mean, you can't beat Carolina. That's the thing, right? It's like you have an opportunity to beat a crappy team and have a chance at the playoffs, and you just literally drop the ball. Kyler Murray sucks, man. And we kind of talked about this prior to the season. I thought based on volume, just on sheer volume, that Harrison would have done amazing. Just has not, but he does have a good matchup this year. He was your second round pick. Make an executive decision if you want to start him, okay? Juwan Jennings, only 9 points last week. Might be worth a start. Deebo Samuel saying he's back at a 25-point week, but he's been inconsistent the entire year. Was it fool's gold last week? And then you start him in your championship, and then he craps the bed. I don't know. That's up to you guys. Make a decision, right? It's a little bit risky. Thielen's going to be a safe start, I would say, this week. Decent matchup versus position coming off a 15-point week. Leggett obviously banged up. Coker had that big week 2 weeks ago, did nothing the week after. Very volatile, okay? And again, these are the mid-range matchup guys like DJ Moore, Demario Douglas, different players. Devontae Adams, mid-range matchup. Drake London, a little banged up there. You can see a heart designation. Check that before the game. 11 points last week. Should be good to go. Mid-range matchup. Guys that have it in tough, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you're still not going to sit Amon-Ra St. Brown. Toughest, hardest matchup versus position versus San Fran. Coming off a 19-point week. He's had a couple down weeks in this year, but nobody's perfect. You still got to start him. Brian Thomas Jr., red hot. His ADP is going to skyrocket next year for sure. 31 and 36 points the past 2 weeks consecutively. Amazing stuff for Brian Thomas Jr. Amazing. A guy that I was suggesting in 16 rounds of draft. Round ADP was around 8th round ADP. Did much better than guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., guys like Tyreek Hill. And you didn't have to spend a first or second round pick. This is why robust RB is the way to go when you are drafting, okay? But amazing talent and tough matchup versus Tennessee, but I would definitely want to sit him. Jefferson, amazing. Got to start him. Third hardest matchup versus position. You still got to start him. Jamar Chase, obviously got to start him, but these are all guys with tough matchups, as you can see here. You still got to start these guys, okay? And again, Shakir, still a bit of a wide receiver committee there. 4 points, 3 points, and 2 points for Amari Cooper, Coleman, and Shakir. Absolute disaster. You would think that, Allen would key in on one guy. I thought it would be Keon Coleman. Didn't happen. A lot of people thought it'd be Shakir. He had a couple of good games, nothing great. And, it just has not got it done. And a lot of people thought it was Curtis Samuel. Like, no, it's definitely not Curtis Samuel. He sucks. And a lot of people thought it'd be Amari Cooper when he got brought in. Nobody has emerged. And even people thought it was Kincaid. Drafting him in the third round, like, don't draft Kincaid. So I was in on this, but I thought it would be Keon Coleman, young, dynamic, talent, explosive, all that stuff, and a high draft capital pick, and the other guy sucked around him. He was the best bet. He just didn't get it done. And nobody did. But at least I didn't spend a second or third round pick and Keon Coleman, who's 8th to 9th round pick, which I'm okay with, okay? CeeDee Lamb, obviously got to start him. Tough matchup versus position. Puka, you got to start him. Tough matchup, obviously, but at least you know Malik Neighbors, 9th hardest versus position. You got to start him. Jackson Smith, also a tough matchup versus Chicago. But Jackson Smith, Malik Neighbors, Puka, all these guys have tough matchups. Amon-Ra, Jefferson, Brian Thomas, but you still got to start them guys, okay? But being aware that they have a tough matchup, so for some unforeseen reason they have a bad week, you're like, oh man, I lost in my championship because Brian Thomas Jr. laid an egg. He had a tough matchup on paper. Just, at least you know that, You don't know what you don't know, but now you know. Does that make sense now? All right, let's move on to tight ends here. And tight ends, start your most consistent tight ends, everybody. Guys that haven't been tough, George Kittle, you still got to start him. Laporta, coming off 2 safe weeks, 21 and 14 points. 3rd hardest matchup versus position, you still got to start him, right? Other guys, Zach Ertz, 2 points last week, 5 the week before. 6th hardest matchup versus position. I'd be a little cautious with Zach Ertz. Hasn't gotten done the past couple weeks. Jake Ferguson, only 10 points. I had an easy matchup last week. Still only got 10 points. Not acceptable. 8th hardest matchup versus position. Kincaid, I'd be cautious with all these guys, but if you don't have a better option, you got to start him. Brock Bowers, tough matchup versus position, but you don't sit Brock Bowers, coming off a 21-point week. Got to start him regardless. Geno Smith, you got to start him. Let's go over some of the guys that have a good matchup. Again, if I don't mention them, they've got a mid-range matchup. Kate Auden putting up some duds. He got banged up, though. 0 points. Check his injury designation, but he does have an easy matchup if he does play. Adam Troutman, I wouldn't start here. He's Denver's guy versus Cincy. Good matchup, but he hasn't done much. 2 points last time he was out. Not good. Other guys, Foster Monroe, good matchup, very hard to trust. Very, very touch and go, sketchy. I would start Hawkinson, but he only had 5 points last time he was out. Easy matchup, though. Trey McBride, 5 points last time he was out. But again, their playoff hopes are done. How hard is he going to play, if at all? So you got to be cautious. Some of these guys are going to be rested, right? Kyle Pitts, some teams play it out, but, I don't know. I just be a little cautious, right? So Kyle Pitts done nothing, just sucks, right? So again, you should know this late in the game, like who your starting tight end is, or, as who you can get 5-10 points out of, start them, okay? Optimal defense is to start this week. Again, we went over the Christmas matchups, but let's go real quickly here and filter by the defenses to start versus position. This would come up. Okay, so these are the optimal defenses to start. Again, smash or tap it, slap, hit the thumbs up, and drop your questions below. But you can see it right here, guys. These are guys that have the easiest matchups. Dolphins versus Cleveland, Jacksonville versus Tennessee, Colts versus the Giants. I like that matchup. Saints versus Vegas, who's at home. Chargers versus New England, Bears versus Seattle, Raiders versus New Orleans. All good matchups. Seattle versus Chicago, Browns versus Miami could be good. Giants versus Indy, Eagles versus Dallas. I do like the Eagles versus Dallas matchup. That could be very profitable this week in fantasy and DFS. $3,100, as you can see, it's expensive, right? $3,100 for DFS here. And that's why Dolphins is expensive, $3,200, right? You can see the more expensive matchups are the best matchups. 34 for the Chargers versus New England, another good start. So these are your optimal starts at the defense position if you are looking to stream or start a defense, all right? Some last tips here, though. Honestly, guys, it's been a wild year. It's a championship. Don't get too cute with trying to start guys that are just, kind of fill-in guys or guys in kind of new areas like Deontay Johnson going to a new offense. If he starts, on Houston, very risky, right? Like go with guys that, are going to perform and have been performing all year for you, okay? Go with the guys that you believe in, that have been consistent. You want to look at how they did the past 3 weeks. You want to take a look at the matchup, which I just gave you. You want to go with the gut feeling at the end of the day. What does your gut tell you? If you're torn between this guy and that guy, you want to make sure you start the right person. This is not a week to mess up. You made it this far. You didn't come this far. It's only come this far. Okay, guys? Line mentality, stay sharp. And again, I'm going to be continuing with the content here. I'm going to probably do 3 to 4 episodes a week. We're going to talk about 2025. We're going to talk about some busts from this week. We're going to keep the content rolling for you. We're going to talk about playoff football. We're going to talk about the latest news. There's going to be a ton here on this channel. Now is the time to subscribe as we start forward thinking into 2025 fantasy football, okay? NFL Week 17 preview right here. Fantasy football must-start championships. Everything covered here for you, the complete guide. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up. Drop your questions below. Very important you hit subscribe. And have yourself an absolutely amazing Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. But I will keep the content rolling. So turn on the bell and we'll keep this relationship going here. talking football, all right? And sports in general. I appreciate you. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. We'll talk soon.